The end of average. MLBO cannot be expressed as a number. If you've got it there, I don't have it on the title, but it's actually better to say who you are. I've just been thinking about that because you see what I mean. Moving on. So it's I read this book by this guy. He's a scientist, a professor, blah, blah, blah. He's a faculty director at Harvard. He's awesome. He's bloody awesome. He's got other books. Pick this one. I think it's a real game changer. I think it's really helped me personally. So I'm also taking on board something you said, Con. So I'm just doing a quick overview.
I like that.
I like a bit of mystery.
So emotional.
But it's not just about me, is it? It's about all you guys.
No.
So I'm going to run you through 3 examples as quick as I can. I'm going to land you with the payload bullet principle concept, and then I'm going to hit you with the why.
Why?
If you can just stay with me to there, I hopefully think I'll get you buying.
Love the why.
Because we've got a bit more to get through after that. It's all about averages. It's all about how averages have been used in our world.
Yes.
Standardization flows on from averages, and it doesn't work anymore. Why we're complex, why averages don't work for people, and how the future is looking and can look, and what it means to you.
That's pretty cool.
So it's the late 1940s, and the US Air Force has a serious problem. All of a sudden, its elite pilots can't keep control of their planes. In one day, in just a training day, 17 pilots crashed planes.
What?
One day training, 17 pilots crashed planes.
Shivers.
Serious problem.
You're not
They
kidding.
knew the planes weren't malfunctioning, so they decided it was pilot error. They blamed the pilots.
Yeah.
After a while, they looked into it and they went, they blamed the trainees. And after that, they ran out of things to blame.
Self-inflicted.
Self-inflicted.
So the big change were jet engines. Turbine or jet-powered engines.
Yes.
So,
Sorry, mate, that's Pakistan Air Force.
I knew he'd catch it. I knew he'd catch it. But look how cool the photo looks.
I know, it's brilliant.
It's just a good photo. I just like it.
That's brilliant. It's
And I thought he would get it. So well done, chocolate buddies.
So what year was this?
Yeah. I was thinking of at least blurring it out, but I thought, no, I'll leave the Easter egg in there because I thought someone would catch it.
Someone's got to find it, eh?
So I should have told Con before.
No.
He's going to catch it.
What year was this? No.
Late 1940s.
Oh, right, okay.
So the jet turbo, the jet engines are coming through, and that's the big change.
Okay.
So after scratching their heads, they said, well, the cockpits are designed on the average pilot. Based in the late 1920s, they did all the measurements and whatnot. Maybe food's changing, maybe they're getting a bit more. Maybe the average pilot's a bit bigger or something. So they sent off to a university, and along comes Gilbert Daniel from Harvard, tasked with re-evaluating and getting the new average. This guy's a different thinker, and he already knew something was up. So he averaged them across 10 measures. So height, chest, arm, length, weight, 10 measures. And then he generously gave a 30% margin.
That's a bad text. I've used the ones on my desk. But the unsuspecting students. And use a black one or maybe a blue one or
high contrast. So there's 10 measures from the minimum of the range to the maximum.
Yes.
Keep in mind that they're already selecting pilots based on certain physique, certain attributes. Old mate Lurch, who stoops under the door to get in, he's not getting in already. So they're already pre-selected for their attributes. So height, chest, etc. And so he found the average of all these types. He generously gave a 30% margin, which basically gave all of this, all that fat, to be the average. My name is Dylan Rumboff. Welcome to the training.
Right.
So, for example, 5 foot 9 inches, 5 foot 11 inches, average height.
Right. 9 to 11. Yeah,
So that's a big, fat, and wide margin. So the scientists expected that a sizable number of pilots would fall within average, within all 10 dimensions. They compared each individual pilot, one by one, 0.
Oh.
Not a single pilot was average.
Oh.
4,063 elite, already working pilots in the US Air Force, not a single one
Was average.
was the right size, was average to the average cockpit.
Oh. How much?
So no one person was average. Every single pilot had at least one measure out of range. Even more astonishing, this guy Daniels discovered if you just pick 3 of the 10 dimensions, you got 3%. 3% were average.
Out of how many? 4,000?
4,000.
Oh my.
So what they found was if you design a cockpit to fit the average pilot, you've actually designed it for no one.
Correct. For no one. Yes, exactly. Oh, there's that.
So there's the average range.
Oh my.
It gives you a sense of how fit. And
Exactly.
An average doesn't exist.
No.
That's what this talk to you is about.
That's interesting. That is very.
The guy on the left does not look like a pilot.
No.
Exactly.
Some characters,
Flies cargo planes.
some storytelling, some
Cargo
characters
planes.
may have been changed for dramatic purposes.
He might be one of the Wagner boys.
Oh yeah.
On the back line, I think. Norma.
Oh.
So scientists, statisticians got all the data together, like pilots, found the average on all the dimensions available, and then an artist came up with this, the ideal young woman. And there was a contest once this statue was released, launching a Norma craze. Submit your body dimensions, and the closest woman would be heralded, as Norma. It was a big deal. It got on Time magazine. It got on TV, radio. The judges assumed most entrants because you already think you're normal, right?
Yeah, yeah. I now got a
Most of them
normal.
would be somewhere in the average section. But like the Air Force study, they found, there's no such thing as the average pilot. The lookalike competition showed the average size woman didn't exist either.
Why?
No, they just didn't, less than 40 of the 3,800 contestants scored 5 on that 9.
That's incredible.
So, what's important, why I added this one, because it's kind of similar, is that instead of seeing the evidence for what it is, doctors, scientists, institutions came to the conclusion that American women, on the whole, were unhealthy and out of shape.
Right.
That's why I put this one in, because I want you to take a mental note
How
here.
did they do?
This incorrect assumption about American women has also been applied to every single one of you. In averages.
I thought I was a normal woman, but
You were wrong, Joe. You were right.
I've stepped into a current landmine, Con. I need to move on, yes?
What year was the woman's study done?
Yeah.
Around the same time.
Oh, late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah.
It's 40s, 50s, yeah, exactly.
Isn't that funny?
I think the giveaway is the black and white photo, but yeah, time
around the
magazine.
time.
They didn't have colour back then, did they?
Norma Jean, it's around her time as well.
Oh, yes, you're right, yes.
So this is just a typical brain scan of an fMRI.
Oh, yes.
Dr. Michael Miller conducted another study, like many studies before it. This one based on verbal memory. Subjects are asked to recall various memory exercises, and you get a digital map. Okay, hundreds have been done before. He had a specific interest he's trying to figure out. When Dr. Miller finished his experiment, he reported his findings the same way that every neuroscientist does. They take all those measurements and average them up, spit it out,
These are average.
and then they look at the average data. Except before he did that, he just had an impulse to look at it at an individual level.
Yeah.
And what he found was that every single one of his subjects, all 16 of them, their individual scans looked nothing like the averaged data. He was shocked. He brought them all back, had them scanned again.
Again. Shit.
And every individual subject, their scans were similar to their previous scans. They were consistent to themselves.
I was
Do
just,
you know what
yeah,
kind of scan you used?
fMRI, functional MRI. It's the current best tool they have.
Yeah.
They've been used
But
for a
you're
while.
also limited in them, that's why I'm really surprised.
Everything has its limits.
Uh-huh.
Technology.
It's like X-rays. You
Lots
can
of
only
things.
get so many before you start busting vessels.
Yeah.
So he was stunned. He was stunned.
Wow.
It's just an absolute revelation. And you know, basically everyone before him had basically been averaging it together. So the guiding assumption of decades of neuroscience research is unfounded. There's no such thing as the average brain. And typically, to get to this point, they don't study left-handed people. They just exclude them because it warps their desire to get a nice, clean average sample.
I was going to say,
Cut
yeah,
left-handed people out.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
That's
I mean-
fair enough. There's lots of left-handed people around it.
They do the same in violin section.
Look, left-handed, they're out there. Just need to stay careful.
They do the same in violin section.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think
No
that
way.
might work.
Because it looks wrong.
Because everyone's going like that.
And it's
You get
gonna blind the other
left-handed
person.
And they go against the flow and they
Yeah.
flash photos.
Oh, jeez.
They say left-handed violinists, so yeah, there's not
So they'll
many.
build a wheelchair ramp to let the right-handed wheelchair violinist go in, but a left-handed person. So they kick out the left-hand people from these studies, and anyone who just looks too weird, outliers, they exclude them because they feel like it.
Well, that's all of us.
I resemble that statement.
You misunderstood because what's happening, they're not seeing anything. You know.
So what's happening with subject one? There's like no activity or
That's their neuroactivity.
Doesn't look like there's much
under
thinking
the
going
test
on.
condition. That's how their brain works under
Yep.
the same test.
Ah,
And
yeah.
when he brought them back, it was a similar pattern to that individual. They were consistently different.
That's
So
the
out-
word,
out of the
consistently different.
16 subjects, not a single one represented the averaged combined.
16 is not a very wide net, though.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah, that's true. But
But
what,
still-
what we found is that I'm piecing together the understanding that when we average together really complex traits, it doesn't work.
Because that is,
It doesn't work.
that's very complicated, yeah, it is.
So if you go back to any of the other studies and look at the individual data, this is what you find.
Yeah.
There isn't an average brain pattern for many of the subjects of the studies. I don't know if it's all of them.
No, it
But
wouldn't surprise
otherwise-
me. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Yeah.
Yeah, so to this day, this scientific community is still struggling to accept and update their thinking.
An average.
There's a powerful impulse to just wash
Yeah.
it away.
That's interesting.
So what this means, understanding an individual by comparing them to the average is flawless.
Exactly
It's
right.
wrong.
Yes, yes.
It's because
Yes.
the average person doesn't exist.
Interesting.
Why we use it? To try and make complicated problems simpler,
Correct.
to get the job done.
Yeah, yes, I was just going to say that, yeah. Come on, get it over and done with. Come on.
But you can't accurately predict how someone will be based on these simple kind of scores.
No.
I can't read that. So if you design a system based on the average, you have in fact designed it for no one.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because what do you really compare the average to?
That's right. Yeah.
And what is the average for? Why are we taking the average? Why is it a really helpful tool that I found to unpack some of this?
That's great. Yeah.
So when we, but mainly institutions, systems, try to understand individuals who don't know well, there's a shift in how we think. Like how we understand our best mate and Joe across the street, there's a difference. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can unpack that.
Wow.
It's not working anymore. It's failing you, it's failing me. It has and continually inaccurately judges and ranks us. If you can get your head around this, it'll give you a courage foundation to push back against some of the systems that are trying to box you into areas when you know there's a better, more nuanced, more complex, tailored option for you. Just remember, the normal person,
It's not.
it's not real. It's not real. And there isn't a normal way for life. That one makes a bit more sense, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But when we have goals, we compare ourselves to everyone else who has the same goals, and we have this tendency to think there's a normal way. But it's just not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It should come through.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the Information Purification Directives. We have created, for the first time in all history, a garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests of vain contradictory thoughts. Our unification of thoughts is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
Yeah. Does anyone know where that's from?
Sweet.
That's a movie or what?
That won so many awards. Come on. It's an Apple ad. It's the ad that Apple first came out when they brought out what we call the Macintosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's very intelligent.
Nowadays we call companies like that, the buzzword is disruptors.
Yeah, that's it. That's the word. Disrupt. I'm trying to think of that a few days ago.
1984 ad, directed by
84.
Ridley Scott. That's why it's so.
Oh, I don't know.
Met him.
Oh, bless. Amazing.
Yeah.
He's
I used to do a bit of work for his promos arm when I was living in London.
amazing.
Ridley Scott. Yeah, pretty big time.
Awesome stuff.
But that's true. Yeah.
So I have been bashing averages for a while now, but they had its place. There was a reason.
Yeah.
Industrialization. Like, who's heard of? Let's go back from industrialization. Who's heard of the stories of kings discovering they're not actually rich, but they're actually insolvent. They're actually broke.
Yeah.
Numbers, because they didn't have a grip of the numbers. Ever since we've been able to grow more food than we can eat and store it, numbers has been like a force like nature that we've had to contend with. Industrialization comes along, and we need systems to make production easier. Or we chose to, however you want to feel about that. And systems love simplicity.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, I agree there.
They don't like you being complex. They need you to be simple.
Yeah.
Type A, type B.
Yeah.
In here. I want you in here. Unfortunately, all the things that are important we're not average.
That's exactly right.
So systems want simplicity. which pushes the industrial machines need to feed, needs to grow. You know, a powerful lumbering flywheel, faster, 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 faster. Once it's built momentum, you know, once it's got that inertia, it wants a straight path.
No bumps.
So industrialization is the machine of simplifying complex process. Frederick Taylor loved averaging everything, and he sparked basically a religion in industrial manufacturing companies and processes. He would find the average shovel size for the average coal load and say, this is the size of a shovel. He'd apply it to everything because there were some benefits in having consistency, in having strict, guidelines. So this is where policies, procedures, rules, methods, designs, tolerances, a lot of that comes from. He determined that a new class of planners would control the oversight, planning, and decision-making of all these policies, these new rules and tasks and requirements. And he adopted a recently coined term, the manager.
Yes.
That's where it comes from.
That's a good point.
KPIs.
KPIs, there you go. Love it.
We could have a therapy session right now on KPIs.
Exactly.
Oh, man. Every one of us, right? Yeah. But more work rules means more.
Yes. Right on.
Memory, training. The Industrial Revolution created the education system we have today. It needed people to be more skilled, more literate, more abilities. It was fine when, originally, you just needed to be a squishy version of a robot, a fleshy cog in the machine. But as more policies and procedures and tighter tolerances and more efficiency demands required all of this, it gave birth. It demanded an education system. This is why the education system is so concerningly similar to a production line.
Actually, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on.
Why do we group classes by age?
We do. We don't group them by quite.
That's the average.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're saying the average intelligence of a 5-year-old is about the same.
No, we group the classes by age because that's the stage of their brain development.
Yeah. That's
Of whose brain development?
Well,
of the kids.
the people of that age.
Yeah.
So, a lot of companies, elite ones, simple ones, reduce employees to a single rank score. Some of us might not be aware of it. Some of us back of house in HR, but they do. Some of the most, elite, like consulting firms and lawyer firms and whatnot, they reduce their high-paid employees and the receptionists to a single score, a single ranking score. Why do they do that?
Money.
Money. That's the first one. Yeah. Save
Simple as
money.
that. Cutting cost.
It's for the system.
It's to work in with that system.
It's to fit the system. It's to make it easier for the system. And if you've got nothing else to rank with, that's a good choice. It's not a bad way of doing it. But a little Easter egg for the end of it is that I think the argument is that there are some better ways to automate understanding a little bit more, more complexity to us. So the more complex jobs get, the less using averages for individuals work. The more complex jobs are, comparing an individual to an average fails to understand that person. So there's our big boys again.
Yeah.
Who's bigger?
A bigger as in.
Who's bigger? Who's bigger? Who does the bigger size?
One's taller.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, maybe these aren't. Maybe you disagree with the categories of these, but this is what we've got. And if you average them out, they are technically, on average, the same size.
Oh, right. Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
But
Because what he makes up for tallness, he loses in. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it depends on why. Why are we making the average?
Yeah, that's why
Yeah, but also-
that's why they brought out BMI.
Yeah. Because like BMI is a helpful tool
Yeah.
on average against millions of people.
Yes. Yeah.
But you know, but we understand that most doctors and most smart enough people will be able to understand their individual self compared to a BMI and disregard it if it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Not everyone's that smart though, and not everyone has access to a good doctor, and they can, you know, think that they're out of range in a bad way.
Those two gentlemen there,
Yep.
in today's 21st century, neither one of them could fit into a Lamborghini.
That's true.
Is that what he said to me? I'll give you a Lamborghini. You can fit it. Guarantee I'll fit it.
And that's your average.
Yeah, but
Your Lamborghini.
Yeah, I'll still fit it.
Nothing a 9-inch angle grinder won't fix, mate.
That's funny.
So, in terms of those profiles, the jaggedness principle is we can't apply one-dimensional thinking to understand something that is complex and jagged.
Yeah.
And almost every human characteristic that we care about is jagged. Like intelligence, you know. Again, if you've got no other choice than to, IQ is a very powerful and like technically true scoring unit.
But it's a scoring.
But
Yeah.
the world's complex, right? Like, if you've got no other choice,
There's
but
over
then-
1,500 different IQ tests.
Not really that many.
1,500 different forms of it. So to say that
just need to
IQ
find the one that fits you then, right?
sticks with your
It's just one that
argument,
fits you, yeah.
if the average doesn't work. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then a woman, and she was smart. What do I mean by that? What do I mean when I say she was smart?
She was witty. She understood the ways of the world. You know, she was a good TAE trainer.
Is she educated?
she can do three things at once.
Is she
All
employed?
women can do that. Multitasking.
I'll take two.
Should have picked a man. I knew it. I was listening. Is she employed? Is this smart woman employed? Is she a quick learner? What do we mean?
What do you mean by smart?
What do we mean when we say smart? Can she solve? Is she a problem solver? What? All categories of problems?
Maybe she's a snappy dresser.
Yeah, exactly. What do we categorise?
So these two women were scored on the Welshire Adult Intelligence Scale. It's one of two of the most cited intelligence scales, so it's well respected. The consensus is that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 subtypes, subcategories of intelligence for intelligence profile, and on average they have the same intelligence.
On average.
How similarities?
Yes. So
Similar to what?
I think that's pattern recognition. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I reckon, yeah. Vocabulary, knowledge.
So you can see they're scored quite differently in different areas. And this is what falls back into a complex world, complex problems, and trying to understand people based on like a single intelligence score. So the problem is that when trying to measure talent, we frequently resort to the average and reduce jagged talent to a single dimension. Walking, so fundamental. Walking, essential to the human species. There must be a normal way we develop to walk.
Yeah.
So for almost 60 years, leading science thought so. They said there were normal stages, normal milestones on a typical timeline. And it's just not the case. It took one scientist to, instead of average all the data together and then look at it in that band, they found what they did is they looked at the individual assessments and found that, like the brain scans, there's no average,
No.
average way.
You hear it when people say, "Oh, my child started working at 9 months. Mine started working at 6 months. Mine started working at 1 year," and I think, hang on, that's not average."
So we've had these conversations as parents, and they can help us feel better if we're feeling some concern about these claimed developmental milestones at an individual level.
Yeah.
But we're still constantly being told that there's this normal average pathway.
You're right. Yeah.
And unfortunately, over the decades, many times doctors would say your child's failure to get to its knees and rock at 5 or 6 months might be an indicator of a very serious condition. And that turned out to be like 5% of the case. So, so a lot of people put through a lot. And obviously it's good to get early detection, but at the cost of 95% of parents being told something awful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not great. So how did the experts become so wrong? Because they combined and averaged it, and these scientists looked at the individual.
Yeah.
Normative thinking, the belief that there is only one pathway, it hasn't just fooled scientists in whatever you call this babyology.
Babyology.
Colon cancer, here's a fun little topic.
Oh my.
So for decades,
Not kidding.
they assumed that colon cancer cells formed and progressed in a fixed sequence. Turns out the standard pathway that they originally found only accounts for 7%.
Wow.
In fact, there's so many different pathways, they ended up describing them as different forms of colon cancer.
Shivers.
How did they get it so wrong?
Yeah.
Now, one technology, they didn't have all of the ability to get some of the complexity, but not all of it. But also, because they just took all the wide variety of patients' data that was expressed in numbers and averaged it,
Right.
leading them to think, looking for a single normal average pathway.
Yeah.
So the normal pathway doesn't exist, the normal person doesn't exist, and you can't understand yourself by comparing yourself to this idea of a normal person on a normal pathway. So where does this leave you? You can't rely on it as a guide. So unfortunately, it means a bit more work on understanding yourself and knowing that there's plenty of applications where being typed like this isn't appropriate for you. So trying to understand your jagged profile, like if you have goals and you're being told there's a certain way, you need to pay more attention to. If you go, I don't think night school is a good fit for me. I think I need to stop work. Like whatever, like simple, like some of this stuff sounds kind of obvious,
But
but the system's telling you to think about it simply, and you're not.
yeah, it's a
simple.
good point. Yeah.
The path less traveled. So you need to think about yourself in a more. Remember that you're complex. Think about yourself in a different way.
What are you doing? You're not actually going into an asteroid field.
They'd be crazy to follow us, wouldn't they?
You don't have to do this to impress me.
Sir, the possibility of successfully navigating an asteroid field is approximately 3,720 to 1.
Never tell me the odds.
That's good. Never tell me the odds. I love that.
Never
That's
tell
so
me
good.
the odds.
That is really good.
So let's say there's only one way, because a lot of people believe that, whatever their goal is, whether it's to become a lawyer eventually, you do need to pass the bar exam. But let's say there's only one way for your goal, or even life itself. If you believe that there's only one pathway that exists, then all there is to measure your progress is how fast you're achieving milestones. But this isn't the case in learning, when it comes to learning, okay? Like, you're not going to hire a tiler that takes 2 weeks to do a 2-foot barbell. But in learning, speed and learning have no connection. So unfortunately, they figured out 30 years ago now that speed and learning ability, your capacity to achieve like the higher limits, they're not correlated. Unfortunately, we've known that for 30 years. The original studies have been replicated over and over again, different cultures, different places. In those studies, the total time's the same, but the delivery in the control group or whatever it's called was self-paced. And they got tutors so they could jump ahead where it's easy, focus on bits that are hard, and they achieved what's technically called mastery a lot more. Yeah. And it's just been demonstrated. Way back in the 70s when they figured this out, in the study they said obviously it's not feasible for everybody to have a tutor. Yeah. What about today? We have the technology. Yeah. Like we have the capacity to do it differently, but the system doesn't like differently. So it likes doing it the way it's always done it. So that's what I'm getting at. Yeah, exactly. So once
what
again,
about this learning curve that they're talking?
Learning curves, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. So for example,
how do you average that one?
Yeah. So how slow you learn something has no indication on your ability to understand it. Context. Human traits aren't consistent. So we have a powerful tendency, the less we know someone, to type them as a true essence. If they're a hard worker at work, we think they might have that essence and propagate it through. We have this tendency to kind of generalize people the less we know them. The more we know them, the more we just instinctively know they're complex. So typing and ranking is both rely on a comparison of the individual to a group average. Yeah. Traits aren't real when it comes to the individual. Traits are still useful as a subset, averages compared to averages. The Italian soccer team versus the Australian soccer team versus averages, it still makes sense. But when we're talking about individuals, if I described my friend as introverted, what does that mean? What am I trying to say? Because we're different in different situations. Context matters, and this is part of not just physical attributes, but things like honesty. Yeah. So they've done very in-depth studies, a lot of resources for a lot of students. Once again, repeat and ratify. Context for aggression is if-then signatures for aggression. Parents, teachers, male peers, female peers, animals, they both have the same 0.8 average aggression score. But if people in these young boys' lives know them better, they can avoid the pitfalls of their life's journey. Context. Human traits aren't consistent. We're different in different situations. Honesty. It's in the book, it's really quite interesting, but they set up the environment to know for sure when they were cheating. Hundreds of students. Replicated study. Their average honesty score, 3.1. This is apparently quite a surprising performance.
Yeah, that is, yeah.
It's not common to see someone land so close to average. And you can see this person has some sensitivities, they're very honest in homework, very dishonest with athletics. So a go-getter can have performance anxiety, a trustworthy clerk can steal from their mother. Context doesn't matter. Okay. Once again, the more complex jobs are, the more they fail to understand that person. And jobs are becoming more complex.
It's true.
We're not going backwards. Judging, ranking job applicants on just a few measures against average isn't working. And
that's what most of the places like the recruitment agencies do. They put them through an algorithm and they say, oh, those 20 can go.
Because that's how it's been always done.
It's always
and
been
it's just easy that way.
Of course it is.
And no one expects any different.
Right.
The clients aren't asking for anything different.
Yeah.
Because we haven't really gotten started on doing it differently. But the biggest companies in the world, Google and Microsoft, they know this. They know the way that they've been recruiting for the last decade or so, since the 2000s, hasn't been working.
Yeah.
So if you've already made it into like the interview stage at Microsoft or Google, and you've had 3 years experience, so you're already clearly someone they're interested in, okay? It's not just anyone off the street. If you had 3 years experience, they will not consider your university scores, your college scores. They've come to understand that they're completely unreliable for making a decision on their unique, complex, specialised roles.
Because that
with their specialised culture, it's not reliable. It doesn't do them any good.
No.
They're wasting money. Okay, so sure, maybe the big high-tech companies, they can manage to do this, but what about high-volume companies like Costco?
Yeah, classic, yeah.
Well, Costco, a receptionist can work their way up to, being the person in charge of buying all alcohol globally.
Yeah, that's right.
That's absolutely true. What about like high volume manufacturing, say like a tomato producer? Morningstar company. One of those producers that aren't on the label, they're actually in a lot of the products. 40% of the US market, making them the biggest tomato products company in the world.
Tomatoes.
They don't have managers.
Wow.
They don't have job titles and almost no hierarchy. So they do this thing, they've got a different culture, a different mindset, trying to understand the individual. They expect others to try and understand people at an individual level. Each employee drafts their own mission statement. All affected employees sign off on it, and those same employees review them at a given time.
That's incredible.
A guy called Paul, seasonal worker, operated on a de-skinning line. In a short time, he had presented and convinced his colleagues, and he was trialling different settings. Can you imagine a new casual worker experimenting on a food production line?
Oh my.
It's unbelievable, but it's already here. People are already doing it. Companies are realizing there's a shortcut to getting better talent outside of the expected average range. It's cheaper. There's hidden talent all over the place, and they're trying to figure out ways to scoop them up. He was soon hired full-time once he found a 25% efficiency. And Paul now works in recruitment. All organisations, this is the quote, are based on fundamental assumptions about human beings, whether they know it or not.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, we got there. I'm combining nothings here.
15 minutes.
So when the Air Force asked their esteemed manufacturers to make a customizable cockpit, they first said it wasn't possible. And then they said, oh, well, it'll take too long. And then they said, oh, well, it would be too expensive. And then they tried to lobby to get them to keep it the same. But the Air Force, they had strict outcomes. They couldn't fudge this. This isn't like a share price where things go around. They need their pilots to fly the jets.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And it turns out it wasn't that expensive. And it's one of the reasons why most of the adjustments you have in your chairs and seats and helmets and stuff we have today. So all of a sudden, they rediscovered, the Air Force's elite pilots with the customizable cockpit. And no one was in the Air Force was expecting to expand their pilot pool of talent. But now some of their top decorated pilots, like the likes of Colonel Kim Campbell, aka Killer Chick, highly decorated A-10 Warthog pilot, is 5'4" and weighs 120 pounds. One of the best pilots to do it in the A-10.
See?
Not anywhere near the average.
Yeah,
Wow,
but
that's interesting.
astronauts are the same thing.
Absolutely, because they
The
need the
average
outcome.
height of an
Yeah.
astronaut is 5'4".
Wow.
But the premise here is that I think we have the technology to do better with our education system, to do better with some of our workplaces.
Yeah.
Did they, well, I suppose you wouldn't know, but did they improve the pilots once they come up with the idea of the
That's a good point, yeah.
insert?
I don't know. But basically, they went from having a catastrophe in their hands to being back to normal performance in high performance jet planes.
Yeah.
So you can structure things based on the average, but the average person doesn't exist. Individuals do the task. You fail everyone when you design a system based on the average, everyone loses. That is, if you can do it differently. And I think there are some big opportunities for us to do that. Some of the most gifted people were told they weren't before high school. I don't know about you guys, but I think we need more geniuses, given more opportunities. Last time I checked, we haven't cured cancer.
Probably the last president. Probably the last president that died of cancer.
So I'm making the claim that I believe, at least in some areas, we do have the technology with AI, with apps, with computing, to fit us in a more individualized way, to enable because right now some of the best teachers are accountants.
Yeah.
Some of the best accountants are teachers. We're being pushed into areas because we weren't understood in ways. At least through the education system, I think I can convince everyone that we can do it in a more individualized way for not a lot of money. So at the end of the day, it's not the average person. You need a plumber, you need a doctor, a lawyer. So I think businesses need to start requiring it. Parents need to start to call for it, and workers need to vote for it. We need to ask for better. Thank you guys. Cheers.
Well done. 52 minutes.